My name is Maren Grayson. I'm 32 years old. And 4 weeks ago, my father stood up in front of nearly 70 people at my grandfather's 85th birthday dinner, reached into a velvet bag and handed my brother a platinum cufflink set, handed my sister a vintage emerald brooch, and handed me, the one who drove 3 hours every single weekend to be there, an empty ring box. Worn on the edges. No ribbon. No bow. Just hollow. Stay with me. Because what happened next is the reason I'm still not over it, and the reason I never have to be. A few people chuckled awkwardly, the kind of laugh that escapes before your brain catches up with your mouth. Some folks looked away. My father, Derek Grayson, smiled like he'd just done something generous. Like he'd given me a gift so meaningful it was beyond words. But under the banquet table, my grandfather's hand, 85 years old, fingers thin, veins raised like river lines on a map, found mine. Steady. Warm. On purpose. And he pressed a folded piece of paper into my palm. 8 words. His handwriting. Shaky but sure. 8 words that tore down everything my father had spent 32 years building. I'm going to tell you what those 8 words said. But first, let me take you back to the beginning. Because this story doesn't start at the party. It starts in a small town, in a diner, with a bank statement that changed my whole life before I even knew what I was looking at. Before you go any further, I need you to do something real quick. If you have ever felt invisible in your own family, if you have ever been the person who does everything and gets treated like they did nothing, hit that like button right now. Costs you nothing, and it tells me I'm not just talking into the void. And subscribe, because this story has a twist at the end that I promise you are not ready for. Drop your city and your local time in the comments too. I read every single one and I love knowing where in the world you are when you hear this. Okay. Now, let's go back. I grew up in Harlow Creek, Georgia. It's the kind of place where everybody knows your business before you do. One main road, a post office that doubles as a gossip hub, and a Waffle House that never closes. I'm a graphic designer and brand illustrator. I run a small creative studio out of a rented space on Birchwood Avenue, sketchbooks stacked on every surface, the hum of my drawing tablet in the corner, the smell of fresh printer ink that never quite leaves the air. I don't make a lot of money. But I built that studio from nothing, and I am proud of every logo, every hand-lettered label, and every small business owner I helped look like they belonged in the big leagues. The Grayson family runs on one currency, my father's approval. Derek Grayson decides who matters. He controls the Thanksgiving seating. He runs the group texts. He writes the family story and sells it to anyone willing to listen. Derek says you're solid, everyone treats you like gold. Derek says you're difficult, well, that label sticks like red Georgia clay. I've been the difficult one since I was 22. My sister Noelle is 35. She married a guy named Brett Hutchins, a regional sales manager who laughs at all of Derek's jokes and calls him Sir. Noelle sends our dad a card every week. Not email. An actual card in the mail with stamps. She posts family pictures with captions like, "Roots run deep, love runs deeper." She is, by our father's measurement, everything a Grayson daughter should be. My brother Colton is 28. He has the family last name and that's basically his whole job. He doesn't start trouble. He doesn't stop it either. He eats, shows up, and stays quiet. Derek loves him for it. And then there's me. The one who takes a 3-hour round trip every Saturday to sit with my grandfather Walt Sutton, that's my mom's dad, on the wraparound porch of his farmhouse in Cedarfield. I fix his fence. I clean his gutters. I haul mulch and edge his garden beds and stack firewood in the fall. I sit with him over sweet tea and hear stories about my grandmother who passed before I ever got to meet her. We play cards. We watch bad westerns. We talk. But in Derek's version of events, I only do all of that because I want Walt's land when he dies. That's the story my father tells. That's the one everybody seems to believe. Everybody except Walt. Here's what broke everything open the first time. 10 years ago, I was 22, fresh out of art school, still dumb enough to think honesty fixed things in my family. I stopped by my dad's house to drop off some leftover Thanksgiving pie and spotted something on the kitchen island, a bank statement sitting right there in the open. Joint account. Walt Sutton and Derek Grayson. 3 withdrawals over 6 weeks totaling close to $18,000. The memo field said, sunroom renovation, HVAC upgrade, appliance replacement. My grandfather does not have a sunroom being renovated. My father does. I asked. That's all I did. I said, Dad, does Grandpa Walt know you've been pulling from his account? Derek's face went white, then red, then that particular shade of tight that meant I had stepped somewhere I was never supposed to go. You don't question your father, Maren. I said, I'm not trying to fight. I'm asking. That was the last honest conversation we ever had. By the end of that week, I was the troublemaker. Derek told Noel I was jealous. Told Colton I was trying to stir something up. Told my aunts and uncles I was trying to turn Walt against the family. The label stuck fast because labels are easy and truth is work. What I didn't know then was that Walt had seen every single bit of it. He saw the withdrawals. He saw Derek relabeling me. He saw his own son-in-law. My mother passed when I was 16 and Derek never fully let Walt be a real part of our lives after that. Begin to squeeze the one grandkid who actually showed up every Saturday. And Walt started doing something about it. Quietly. Strategically. The way old farmhands do everything, no waste, no noise, just work. That same year, he discovered something worse than the withdrawals. Derek had, without asking, added his own name to one of Walt's savings accounts and had been slowly working to put himself in charge of Walt's estate after he died. In a version of the will that Walt had apparently agreed to during a visit where, by Walt's account, Derek never actually explained what he was signing. Walt called an attorney in October of that year. Her name was Sandra Kellerman, out of Macon. And what he built with her over the next 10 years I wouldn't know about for a long, long time. Fast forward to 3 months before the birthday party. My father announced he was organizing Grandpa Walt's 85th birthday celebration at the Ridgeway Lodge, a rental event venue 40 minutes outside Harlow Creek. 65 guests, catered Southern buffet, a photo slideshow, remarks from the family. Derek called me on a Thursday evening. His voice had that particular warmth he uses when he needs something from you. Maren, I need you handling decorations, the slideshow, and coordinating with the caterer. Noel and I will handle the program and the speaking parts. Am I giving remarks? I asked. There was a pause. Kind that's already an answer. It's a tribute to family, sweetheart. We need the people who've been most present. I let that hang there for a second. The woman who drives 6 hours round trip every weekend isn't present enough. The woman who hasn't been to Cedarfield more than 4 times a year is the face of presence. Got it. I swallowed it whole. Called Walt instead. Grandpa, you know Dad's planning a big party for you? I heard. His voice was even. Calm. Like a man reading a book he already finished. He called last week. You okay with all of it? Come to the party, baby girl. That's all I need from you. Something in how he said it stopped me cold. He sounded like someone who already knew the last chapter but was letting the story play out. I would have left it right there. But a few days later I called Noelle about the centerpiece flowers, and the call went to voicemail mid-conversation. I heard her in the background, talking to Brett. Dad's doing the whole heirloom thing at the party. Oh, it is going to be so good. Brett said something I couldn't make out. Then Noelle quieter. She's finally gonna get exactly what she's worth. Nothing. The voicemail beeped. I saved it. I don't entirely know why I did. Actually, I do. 'Cause in my family the truth has a way of just disappearing. And I wasn't going to let it. If you already have a feeling about where this is going, drop a comment right now. Just say I knew it or waiting for the twist. 'Cause you have no idea yet. Trust me on that. 2 weeks before the party, I picked up Walt for what he called a quick errand. I assumed it was the pharmacy. He had a regular Thursday prescription pickup. But instead of going right toward the CVS on Maple, he pointed left. "Take me to Harlow Savings on 5th Street. We parked. He walked in steady. His cane was a precaution more than a necessity. Walt moves with the focused energy of someone who knows exactly where he's going and why. I sat in the lobby reading a farming magazine from 2019 while he disappeared into a private office with a bank manager for about 20 minutes. When he came out, he pressed something small and cold into my hand. A key. Brass. Flat. Kind that opens a safety deposit box. "Keep this somewhere safe. Somewhere your father won't see it." "Grandpa, what is this for?" He looked at me directly. His eyes still sharp, still cutting through everything the way they always have. "For when you need to open what's yours." I didn't ask more. Walt speaks on his own time and you learn to respect that rhythm. On the drive back, he was his regular self. Pointed out that the Hendersons had put in a new mailbox. How business was going at the studio. Hummed along to some old Merle Haggard tune on the radio. But at one stoplight he went quiet and said, "You remind me of your grandmother, Maren. She never needed the fancy stuff to know she was worth something." I squeezed his hand and thought he was just being sentimental. He wasn't. He'd tell me later, "I couldn't give you that key any earlier." If Derek had found it, he'd have tried to pull the whole thing apart before it was ready. The timing had to be right. Timing was 2 weeks away. That week I sat with my feelings and did some math. Not the kind with numbers. Emotional math. If I walk into that party and my father hands me nothing in front of 60-something people, what do I actually lose? Not money. I don't care about jewelry. I've never been a jewelry person. My ears aren't even pierced. But that wasn't what was actually at stake. What was at stake was the story. My father had been pushing a specific story for 10 years, the one where I was the greedy one, the selfish one, the black sheep sniffing around Grandpa Walt's property. And this party was going to be the finale. Public seal of approval on everything Derek had been saying for a decade. 60 people. People who knew us growing up. Relatives. Neighbors. My late mother's friends. Brett's whole family. The folks from Walt's church. If I sat there and smiled through it, I was co-signing the story. I was telling every single one of those people that Derek's version of me was the real one. And there was something else going on too. For months, Derek had been slowly cutting off my access to Walt. "He's tired this weekend, don't come. Give him some space, Maren, he needs rest." Message sounded reasonable on its own. Together they were a wall being built brick by brick. If the party humiliation went unchallenged, Derek would have all the social proof he needed to finish the job. The difficult daughter who got nothing and kept coming around anyway. Clearly she's just after the inheritance. Cut her off entirely. I almost didn't go. But Walt asked me to come and I keep my promises to that man. For days before the party, Derek called us to his house for a planning meeting. His dining room table was covered in printed timelines and color-coded seating charts. Noelle sat across from me with her reading glasses on, going through the event program. Colton leaned against the doorframe eating cashews like he was watching TV. Derek laid out the evening's agenda and then paused for effect. "After the main remarks, we'll do the heirloom distribution." "The what?" I said. "I'll be presenting some of Walt's most cherished pieces to family members. The emerald brooch goes to Noelle. She's building a home, and it represents the women of this family." He looked at Colton. "The cufflinks go to you, son. You carry the Grayson name forward." Then his eyes landed on me. "And something special for you, Maren." Noelle hid a smile behind her water glass. "Not quick enough." "What is it?" I asked. "A surprise, sweetheart." I looked at Colton. He was suddenly very interested in his cashews. After Dad left the room to take a phone call, I grabbed my jacket. Noelle leaned over. You should honestly just be grateful you're even on the guest list. I stopped. Excuse me? You know what I mean. Given your history with Dad. No, say it plainly, Noelle. She didn't. But she didn't have to. The implication was clear enough. There was a ranking system in this family and I was at the very bottom. Everyone in that kitchen knew it. Colton ate another cashew and said absolutely nothing. I drove home white-knuckling the steering wheel with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. That evening I drove out to Cedarfield and sat with Walt on the porch until the sun dropped behind the tree line. I told him everything. The timeline. The heirloom presentation. Noelle's comment. There's something special. Walt didn't flinch. Not even a little. I know, he said. You know? Noelle told you. She mentioned it last week. Was practically glowing about it. Didn't even realize what she was handing me. I stared at him. And you're okay with all this? He set his tea down on the railing. Your father's been waving fake gold his whole life and calling it real. He just doesn't know we know that yet. Grandpa. What does that mean? He reached over and took my hand. If anything happens at that party, anything at all, you call Sandra Kellerman. She's my attorney over in Macon. She's got everything. What do you mean, everything? He squeezed my hand once. Firm. Promise me one thing, baby girl. Whatever Derek pulls at that party, don't react. Don't cry. Don't make a scene. Just wait. Wait for what? For the truth to do its own heavy lifting. I sat with him until the crickets started up loud. He hummed something old and slow. I tried to breathe steady. And I noticed something different about him that night. He wasn't anxious. He wasn't angry. He was settled. Like a man who'd already handled everything that needed handling and was just watching the last pieces fall into place. He was prepared. I promised I wouldn't react. I promised I'd wait. 3 days later, sitting at a table in the back of the Ridgeway Lodge with an empty ring box in my hands and my father's smile aimed at me from across the room, I understood exactly why he needed me to keep that promise. If you're watching this and you've ever sat in a room where someone was publicly humiliating you and you had to just sit there and take it, this next part is for you. Don't click away. This is the part where it turns. The day of the party had that particular energy of a verdict being read. Ridgeway Lodge, white tablecloths, string lights along the rafters, a projector cycling through decades of Walt Sutton's life. I had spent 4 days building that slideshow, every photo scanned myself, every transition timed to old Johnny Cash and Patsy Cline because that's what Walt loves. 67 guests. 2 long tables of family. My Aunt Beverly with her bifocals on a chain. Uncle Roy in his one blazer he only breaks out for occasions. Cousins I see at Christmas and funerals. Brett's parents sat near the front, dressed like they were attending a country club luncheon. Walt's church friends clustered near the dessert spread. Neighbors from out on Route 11 took the window seats. Derek arrived like he was accepting an award. Navy suit, pocket square, the kind of entrance that expects applause. He worked the room for 20 minutes, shaking hands, accepting compliments on the party I organized. You put this together beautifully, Derek. He touched his chest. Family is the whole point. I stood in the back straightening a centerpiece that did not need straightening. Nobody said anything to me. Nobody looked. 3 velvet boxes sat on a cloth-covered display table near the podium. 2 had ivory ribbons tied in perfect bows, fresh, polished, clearly new. The 3rd was older. Smaller. No ribbon. A little scuffed around the corners. It looked like it had been added as an afterthought. 'Cause it was supposed to. Walt came in on Aunt Beverly's arm, moving slow but looking sharp in his charcoal gray suit, the one he saves for moments that matter. His eyes swept the room with the calm authority of a man who's seen a lot of things play out over 85 years and isn't easily surprised by any of them. He found me across the room. We looked at each other. He gave me the smallest nod. I nodded back. The room settled in for what everyone thought was just a birthday party. Derek took the microphone once the dinner plates were cleared. Stood in front of the projector with Walt's old army photo glowing on the screen behind him. He delivered a speech he had clearly rehearsed in front of a bathroom mirror. Tonight is about legacy. He paused. About what this man taught us. About passing down what matters to the people who truly deserve it. A few heads nodded. Aunt Beverly smiled politely. Walt asked me, trusted me, to do something meaningful tonight. To distribute some of his most treasured heirlooms to the people in this family who carry it forward. I watched Walt's face. Stone. Absolute stone. He didn't nod. He didn't shake his head. He sat perfectly still with his hands folded on the tablecloth and his jaw set like poured concrete. Nobody noticed. They were watching Derek. Which was, of course, the whole point. Derek had turned his father-in-law's birthday into his own stage. Legacy isn't just memory, he continued. It's about who earns the right to carry it. He let the word earn sit in the air and float over the tables. Crowd applauded. Brett's mother leaned over and whispered something to his father. Noelle dabbed the outer corner of her eye with her napkin, already before anything had even happened. I sat at the far table, table 7 naturally, tucked near the emergency exit, with my hands flat on the tablecloth and my heartbeat so loud I could feel it in my temples. Under the table in my purse, a brass key I didn't fully understand and a promise I was about to be tested on. Derek lifted the first box. Noelle. His voice cracked with the precision of a man who practiced that crack. He opened the box, lifted the emerald brooch into the light, caught the string lights and flashed green across the tablecloth. Because you represent everything this family stands for. Because Walt would want the women of this family honored. Noelle stood. Tears, real or exceptionally well rehearsed, tracked down her cheeks. She hugged Derek. Camera phones lifted all across the room. Brett's mom pressed both hands to her heart. Applause moved through the room like a tide. Walt did not move. Derek set the second box in front of Colton. The cufflinks. 'Cause you carry our names, son. Because legacy needs someone to hold the standard. Colton grinned, turned them over in his hand, held one up. Uncle Roy gave a thumbs up from across the room. More applause. 2 boxes done. 1 left. The room started noticing. I could feel it before I could see it. The heads turning. The whispers moving between tables like electricity through a wire. The third box sat slightly apart from where the others had been. Older. No ribbon. Like even the table was keeping its distance. A woman I didn't recognize leaned toward her husband. What's in the last one? Derek heard her. He was supposed to hear her. This was the architecture of the whole evening. He turned to me slowly. Our eyes locked across 4 tables and 32 years of history. He picked up the box. He walked it over deliberate, every step counted. The room went quiet the way a room goes quiet before something breaks, not peaceful, just held breath. He stood in front of me. In front of 67 people. And for you, sweetheart. His voice had that sweetness in it. The specific sweetness he reserves for when he wants to wound you in public and make it look like kindness. The box it all came in. Because after all, you've always said the material things don't matter to you. Now you have proof they don't have to. I opened it. Empty. Worn velvet interior. The faint impression where a ring once sat. The outline of something no longer there. A ghost of an heirloom that had already been passed to someone else. A few people laughed. The uncomfortable kind, the kind that comes out when the brain hasn't caught up with the moment. One of Brett's coworkers let out a low whistle. Someone from the church table covered her mouth. My father stood there glowing. Noelle looked at her plate. Colton reached for his water glass. My hands were trembling. My throat closed up. Every nerve in my body was screaming at me to stand up, to say something, to throw that box across the room and let 32 years of swallowed silence shatter on the hardwood floor. But under the table a hand found mine. Thin. Warm. The papery soft skin of a man who has lived 85 full years. My grandfather's fingers pressed a folded piece of paper into my palm. I closed my fist around it. I looked at Derek. I looked at the room. Thank you, Dad. 2 words. Flat. Steady. The exact opposite of what he was expecting. Derek's smile flickered, just for half a second, but I caught it. He'd planned this whole evening step by step around getting a reaction. The difficult daughter proving she was difficult, right there on cue in front of everyone. And instead he got 2 words and a closed face. The room exhaled. Someone scraped a fork. The DJ, bless his confused heart, started the next song about 15 seconds too early. 67 people watched me receive nothing. But in my fist, folded between my fingers, were 8 words that were about to change everything. I excused myself. The hallway to the restrooms had beige carpet and fern arrangements and smelled like lemon cleaner. I locked the door of the single-stall bathroom, leaned my back against it, and opened my hand. Paper was torn from a notepad. Folded twice. Walt's handwriting, the careful, deliberate print he uses when something matters. 8 words in blue pen. Everything real has been in your name for years. Below it, a phone number and 1 word. Kellerman. I read it 3 times. Then a 4th. Everything real. In your name. 4 years. If you're still here, if your heart just did something when you read those words, please share this video right now. Text it to someone who needs it. Post it. 'Cause someone in your life is the empty box person and they need to hear this story today. I'm serious. Do it now, then keep watching. Key in my purse. The safety deposit box at Harlow Savings. Sandra Kellerman, the attorney Walt mentioned. She has everything. I didn't have the full picture yet, but I could feel the shape of it. Something enormous and carefully put together, built over a very long time in rooms I had never been in. I splashed water on my face, fixed my expression in the mirror, folded the note back up and put it in my wallet behind my health insurance card where nobody would ever look. Then I walked back into that banquet room, sat down at table 7, and smiled at my cousin Tara when she asked if I was doing okay. I'm totally fine. This night's about Grandpa. 8 words and Walt's handwriting. That was everything I had. And it was more than Derek had given me in 3 decades. Across the room, Walt watched me come back to my seat. He didn't smile. He didn't wink. He just looked at me the way you look at someone when you've already taken care of them and you just needed them to trust you long enough to find out. The rest of the evening I moved through like I was swimming. Present but floating just above the bottom. I talked to Tara about her new dog. I told Uncle Roy his blazer looked great. I ate a piece of the pecan cake I had ordered from the Cedarfield bakery myself. And I waited. Derek kept watching me from across the room. I could feel it on the back of my neck the way you can feel eyes. He was waiting for the collapse. Parking lot meltdown. The angry voicemail on the drive home. He had staged the entire evening around a specific emotional domino, and the domino wasn't falling. He intercepted me near the dessert table. You're holding up well, Maren. Nothing to hold up from, Dad. His eyes scanned my face, looking for a crack. Found nothing. Walked away with his shoulders pulled in tighter than when he'd arrived. My Aunt Beverly found me near the coat rack at the end of the night. Beverly is Walt's younger sister, 73 years old, 4'11", absolutely zero patience for nonsense. What your father did up there, she said quietly, wasn't right. Every single person in that room knows it wasn't right. It's okay, Aunt Bev. It is not okay. But I can see from your face that you already know that. She squeezed my arm. You hold your head up. I found Walt at his table as the guests started gathering their things. He was sitting alone, one hand wrapped around his water glass, the other resting on his knee. His eyes met mine. He nodded. Small. Certain. You did good, baby girl. The drive back to Cedarfield was quiet. Route 12 at night is just headlights and pine trees and the occasional raccoon frozen at the road's edge. Walt sat in the passenger seat with his hands in his lap. Neither of us spoke for the first 15 minutes. The kind of quiet you don't have to fill. Then, without turning his head, he said, "That box was empty." It always was. My grip tightened on the wheel. Grandpa, what did you do? What I should have done years ago. The day your father first made you feel like you didn't belong in this family. I felt my eyes start to sting. Blinked hard. The road blurred, then cleared. Call Sandra Kellerman first thing Monday morning. She'll walk you through everything. And then what? Don't tell your father. Not yet. Why not? Because the truth doesn't need a microphone, Maren. It just needs a little time. I helped him inside, hung up his coat, settled him into his armchair by the window, the one that's been in that spot for 40 years, recovered with new fabric twice but never replaced. I put his tea where he could reach it and tucked the throw blanket around his knees. As I was leaving, he caught my wrist. His grip was stronger than you'd expect. You were always my favorite. Not because you were easy or perfect. 'Cause you were real. You showed up even when it cost you. I made it to my car before I cried. Not the kind of crying that comes from pain. Kind that comes when someone finally says out loud the thing you've been waiting your whole life to hear, and your body doesn't know what to do with the relief except shake. Monday was 36 hours away. I didn't sleep either night. I just lay there in the dark with a brass key in my purse and a folded note in my wallet and Walt's voice playing on a loop. Real. 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 At 8:02 Monday morning, I was already holding my phone. 1 ring. 2. A woman's voice, warm, professional. Kellerman Law. This is Maren Grayson. Walt Sutton is my grandfather. He told me to call. A pause. Ms. Grayson. Yes. Ms. Kellerman has been expecting to hear from you. Expecting. Not let me check the calendar. Not can I take a message. Expecting. Like a seat had been kept open for me at a table I didn't know existed. Can you be here this afternoon? I was already calculating drive time. 3 hours. I'd leave right now if I had to. On the road, somewhere past the county line, my phone rang. Derek. Maren. We should probably talk about the party. His voice was measured. Controlled. The voice he uses when he's testing for damage. I think you handled the whole evening with a lot of maturity. He was checking. Gauging whether I was about to blow something up. Thanks, Dad. The box, I want you to know that came from a place of love. It was symbolic. I know. Good. We should get lunch sometime. Sure. Talk later. I hung up and drove. That was the last normal conversation Derek and I would ever have. Sandra Kellerman's office was in a 2-story brick building above a dry cleaner on Forsyth Street in Macon. Smelled like coffee and old books and the kind of place where serious work gets done without any fuss. Her assistant, a man named Gerald, offered me water. I took it with both hands because my fingers weren't quite steady. Sandra came out to greet me herself. Early 60s, silver locks, reading glasses on a beaded chain, handshake like she means it. She opened a thick folder on the conference table between us and spread it flat. Your grandfather set up a permanent, locked-in trust back in the fall of 2014, she said. Let me make sure you understand what that means. Once he signed these documents, the assets inside the trust stopped being his personal property. They belonged to the trust. Your father has no legal claim to any of it. Nobody does except the one person named to receive it. Who is that? You, Ms. Grayson. The room tilted. I set my water glass down before I dropped it. And if your jaw just dropped, go ahead and hit like right now. 'Cause we're not even at the best part yet. Sandra walked me through it slowly, carefully, with the patience of someone who understands that information this heavy needs to be handed over gently. The Sutton farmhouse in Cedarfield, 4-bedroom, 4 acres on a road Walt has lived on for 60 years. Deed transferred into the trust. Current market value, $840,000. A separate investment account at a credit union in Macon, funded gradually over 10 years through a portion of Walt's pension and Social Security checks. Somewhere around $320,000 grown through modest but consistent investing. The original heirloom jewelry collection, the real emerald brooch, the Betrayal platinum cufflinks, a pair of pearl drop earrings that had been my grandmother's, a gold locket with a photo inside. All of it sitting in a safety deposit box at Harlow Savings on 5th Street. Key in my purse. Total value just under $1.2 million. The items your father distributed at the party, Sandra said, are high-quality fake copies. Your grandfather had them made in 2013, the year before the trust was set up. A jeweler in Atlanta made them to look exactly right. They're convincing to the eye, but they are not the real things. I sat with that for a long moment. I didn't cry. I didn't say anything. I just let it land. My grandfather had spent 10 years doing this. Quietly. Alone. While going to the pharmacy and watching westerns and playing checkers on the porch and never once letting on that he was 3 moves ahead of everyone in the room. Why didn't he just confront my father? I asked. Why didn't he just tell Derek to stop? Sandra leaned back. He did. Once. In 2012. She told me the story. Walt sat Derek down and told him directly, the borrowing from accounts without consent wasn't acceptable, the way he treated Maren wasn't fair, and he expected it to change. Derek's response, "You're getting older, Walt. You don't fully understand how complicated family dynamics can be." Through that conversation, the visit restrictions started. Walt needs rest. Give him space. Don't come this weekend. Walt understood something that most people miss entirely. You cannot reason with someone who controls the story. Derek wasn't going to change. He was going to retaliate. He was going to position Walt as confused, as taken advantage of, as a lonely old man being taken advantage of by a greedy granddaughter. A direct confrontation would only hand Derek the ammunition he needed. So Walt chose a different path. He called Sandra. He had himself evaluated by an independent doctor, sharp, fully clear-headed, with a clean record that nobody could question. He moved assets gradually and quietly. He had the fake copies made. He waited. He told me something years ago, Sandra said. She folded her hands on the table. He said, I can't change Derek, but I can make sure Maren never has to need him. I covered my face with both hands. Then I asked the question that had been burning in me since the moment I unfolded that note. Why didn't he tell me sooner? I spent 10 years thinking I was alone in this. Sandra nodded. He asked himself that too. He said that's the one thing he'd change if he could. But he also said, if Maren knew, she would have gone straight to her father. And Derek would have found a way to tear it all down before it was secure. She was right. 22 at 25 at 28, I would have blown it wide open. I would have marched into Derek's living room and put everything on the table, and Derek would have found a way to spin it, to challenge it, to tie it up in confusion long enough to do damage. Walt protected me by keeping me in the dark. Cost both of us. But it held. Before I left, I said clearly, I don't want this to become a weapon. I didn't know about any of it, and I'm not going to use it to destroy my family. Sandra respected that. But she looked at me directly over her glasses. Miss Grayson, the truth has a way of surfacing on its own timeline. Your sister has a newly made fake piece that she's been showing off everywhere. If she takes that brooch to a jeweler for any reason, cleaning, getting it priced, insurance paperwork, any real jeweler will spot it as a fake within 60 seconds. I hadn't even thought about that. Same with the cufflinks. If your brother gets them polished or has them checked out, they'll flag it. The base metal underneath is worth maybe $30. How long before that happens? Could be weeks. Your sister just got that piece. She's going to want to know what it's worth. These things move fast. She slid a card across the table. If your father contacts you or if any attorney contacts you, call me first. Don't respond to anyone before you talk to me. I thanked her, shook her hand, walked to the parking lot. I sat in my car with the engine off for 20 minutes. I'd brought the empty box with me. I don't fully know why. Maybe because it was the most honest thing my father had ever given me, exactly what it appeared to be. Nothing. And it turned out to be the thing that led me to everything. I drove home with the windows down and the radio off and the strange, weightless feeling of someone who just found out they were never actually alone. Took 2 weeks. I didn't say a word to anyone. I didn't plant any seeds. I didn't make a single call. What I did do was go about my life. I worked through 2 brand identity projects for new clients, the kind of focused creative work that keeps your hands busy when your mind won't slow down. I taught a Saturday lettering and logo workshop to a group of small business owners who were an absolute delight. I drove to Cedarfield and sat with Walt on the porch like I always do. Now here's the part one want you to pay very close attention to, because I didn't do a single thing to make this happen. Not one call. Not one tip. I just waited exactly like Walt told me to. And then watch what the truth does all by itself. 14 days after the party, Noelle took the emerald brooch to a jeweler on Roswell Road in Atlanta. She wanted it checked and priced for insurance purposes because she and Brett were updating their homeowner's policy. The jeweler, a third-generation woman named Rose Kim, put the brooch under magnification, adjusted her light, looked again, called her colleague over. They leaned in and whispered to each other. Then Rose turned to Noelle and said, "I want to be straightforward with you. This is a very well-made fake. The center stone is fake, not a real emerald." Noelle laughed first. The laugh you do before you understand. That's not possible. It's been in my family for 50 years. I'm sorry. I'm very confident in this assessment. Color reportedly drained from Noelle's face in about 3 seconds. She called Derek from the parking lot of that jewelry store. I imagine Rose Kim and her colleagues stood very still during that phone call. The same week, I heard this from Colton himself. He took the cufflinks to a jeweler in Harlow Creek for cleaning before a job interview. The jeweler turned them over twice and said, "These are gold-plated over base metal. Nice plating job, but not solid gold. I'd put the value at maybe $25 to $30 for the pair." 2 fake heirlooms. Same week. 2 different professionals. No coordination. No conspiracy. I was in my studio working on a brand identity mock-up for a new client when my phone started lighting up. Derek called 4 times before I picked up. "What did you do?" Not a question. Ice. "I didn't do anything, Dad." "You switched them out. You've been going to that house every weekend for years. You took the real ones." "Dad, you gave me an empty box. Remember? I didn't take anything." "Don't play dumb with me, Maren. Call Grandpa. Ask him yourself." The line went dead. 2 minutes later, "No, did you know they were fake? Did you know this whole time?" I looked at the text for a long time. I could explain. I could send the voicemail I'd saved. I had it right there. I put my phone face down. Grant, Brett's older brother, who had been at the party, actually texted me that evening out of the blue. Hey, for what it's worth, I told Noelle at the time that the whole setup looked off. She didn't want to hear it. Sometimes people outside your family see your situation more clearly than the people inside it. I wasn't expecting that kindness, but I wasn't going to ignore it either. Colton didn't text or call. Colton, consistent as ever, chose silence. I sat on my apartment steps that evening with chamomile tea and watched the sun go down behind the strip mall across the street. Somewhere across town, my father was coming to terms with the fact that the story he'd been telling for 10 years had a hole in it. A big hole, shaped like an empty box. Derek drove to Cedarfield the next morning. Walt was on the porch when he pulled up. Aunt Beverly and her husband Ted were there with a pot of chicken soup. Derek came through the front gate without calling first. "Walt, did you switch out the jewelry?" Walt looked at him from the rocking chair. "Didn't stand. I gave away what was mine. You distributed what you assumed was yours. Those were never your things to give, Derek. Those were family heirlooms. They were pieces I bought for my wife over 40 years. They were never yours." Beverly set down her soup spoon. "Derek, after everything I've done..." Walt, quiet and level, "You took money from my account without asking. You tried to put your name on my property without explaining what I was signing. And you spent 10 years calling your own daughter greedy when the only person taking from me was you." Ted put a hand on Derek's shoulder. "Derek, sit down." Derek shook him off. "He's turning everyone against me. Maren has been..." Walt, Maren didn't know. She didn't know anything until after the party. "That's the difference between the two of you. She never once asked me for a thing." Derek left. Tires threw gravel all the way down the drive. Beverly looked at Walt. "Good Lord, Daddy." Walt picked up his tea. "He'll settle down. He was wrong about that, but right about everything else. Here's the thing about small southern towns, nothing stays quiet for long." Within a week, between Aunt Beverly and church potluck conversations and neighbor-to-neighbor phone calls that started with, "You are not going to believe this," every single person who attended that birthday party knew 3 things. 1. The jewelry Derek distributed was fake. 2. The real collection in the farmhouse had been in a trust in Maren's name for 10 years. 3. That empty box, Derek's masterpiece moment, was the clearest evidence of his own cruelty displayed in front of everyone he knew. I didn't make a single phone call. I didn't post anything. I didn't send one text. The truth moved through Harlow Creek the way truth moves in places like that, through casseroles and parking lot conversations and phone calls that open with "You sitting down?" Derek tried to rewrite it. Said Walt was elderly and confused. Said I had taken advantage of a helpless old man. Said the whole thing was illegal. But everyone at that party had watched Walt carry on perfectly sharp conversations and navigate the room with more grace than most people half his age. Nobody bought the confusion angle. 2 of his longtime friends stopped calling. Neighbors who used to wave started looking away on their morning walks. The story of the empty box became the shorthand for everything. Every time Derek's name came up, it was the first thing out of anyone's mouth. Derek's version of everything collapsed. For the first time in his life, he had to sit with the weight of consequences he couldn't spin, reframe, or talk his way out of. Pause here because I need to know what you think. Option 1. Walt should have told me sooner. I deserved to know. Option 2. His timing was absolutely perfect and it protected everything. I genuinely go back and forth on this one. Drop a 1 or a 2 in the comments right now. I am reading every single reply. And listen, if you've made it this far into this story and you are not subscribed yet, what are you doing? Hit that button. I put everything into these stories and I am just getting started. The ending of this one is the part people keep coming back to. Stay with me. The Saturday after everything landed, I drove out to Cedarfield. Walt was on the porch. Same chair, same blanket, same sweating tea glass. But he looked lighter. Like a man who'd been carrying a suitcase for a decade and had finally set it down by the door. "How you holding up, Grandpa?" "Better than I've been in a long time." I sat down beside him. I don't want this to hurt anyone more than it already has. He nodded slow. Then use it to build something instead of tear something down. What do you mean? He gestured out toward the house, the land stretching toward the creek. This is yours now. Has been for 10 years. I stayed because I love it. But it needs someone younger. Someone who knows what to do with 4 acres and a reason to stay. My design studio had outgrown its cramped rental space on Birchwood for years. I needed room, a real home office, a proper client meeting space, somewhere I could set up a proper proofing space, lay out large prints, and actually spread out without bumping into walls. 4 acres and a farmhouse felt like breathing again. You want me to move out here? I want you to build something that nobody can hand you an empty box about ever again. I drove home and sat with it for 3 days. Then I gave my landlord 60 days' notice. 6 weeks later, I was on Walt's front porch with a paintbrush and a gallon of mist gray trim paint, fixing the railings, resealing the steps, planting a lavender border that the bees found within a week. Walt sat in his rocking chair watching me work and smiled the way you smile when something you waited a long time for finally becomes real. Derek hired an attorney, a litigator from Augusta who made confident promises. Derek said his elderly father-in-law had been taken advantage of by a scheming granddaughter. He wanted the trust overturned. The attorney reviewed the file. Called Derek back 2 weeks later. Mr. Grayson, this trust was established in 2014 and your father-in-law was fully evaluated by an independent doctor at the time of signing. This trust is locked in, it cannot be undone. Your daughter was 22 when it was created and had no knowledge of it. There is nothing I can ethically do to challenge this. Derek fired him. Found another one. Got the same answer. Sandra Kellerman, on Walt's instructions, sent Derek a cease and desist. For precise paragraphs with no wiggle room. Any further bullying, lies about Maren's character, or attempts to mess with the trust would be handled through the courts. Derek received it on a Wednesday. Noelle texted me that evening. Dad got a letter from Grandpa's attorney. He hasn't said a word in hours. Longest Derek had been quiet in my entire life. I didn't call him. I didn't gloat. I went and painted the other side of the fence. 6 weeks later, Derek called and asked to meet. A diner in town. Neutral ground. I agreed, not because I owed him that, but because I chose to give it. He was already in the booth when I arrived. Plain gray pullover I'd never seen before. No pocket square. No performance of himself. He looked smaller somehow. He was stirring coffee he hadn't touched. I sat down. Ordered tea. Waited. I did what I thought was right, he started. Dad. I kept my voice even. Not cold, not warm. Level. I'm not here to relitigate the last 10 years. I've heard your version my whole life. I don't need a revision today. He closed his mouth. What I'm telling you is this, I'm not carrying the anger anymore. It's too heavy and it isn't mine. But if you want any kind of relationship with me going forward, it starts with honesty. Not today. When you're ready. If you ever are. For the first time in my life, Derek Grayson had absolutely nothing to say. I left money for both drinks, pushed back my chair, and walked outside. Noelle called a few weeks later. She wasn't calling to apologize. She was calling because she was embarrassed and needed somewhere to put it. Do you know how humiliating this is? I showed that brooch to Brett's whole family. His mother said it was gorgeous. It is fake glass, Maren. I know. I'm genuinely sorry it happened that way. Did you know before I went to the jeweler? I found out a couple days before you did. You didn't warn me? Would you have believed me? Long silence. No, she finally said. I wouldn't have. We sat on the phone for about 30 seconds without speaking. 30 seconds can hold a lot depending on what's in it. I need some time, she said. Take whatever you need. She hung up without a goodbye. But it wasn't an angry hang-up. It was a tired one. Kind of tired that sets in when you realize the story you've been living had a different ending than the one you were promised. 3 days later, a text, not ready to talk but starting to look at some things differently. Just wanted you to know. That's not forgiveness. It's not reconciliation. But it's the first honest thing my sister has sent me in 10 years. I deleted the voicemail I'd saved. The one where she laughed about me getting nothing. Not because she deserved that mercy. Because I didn't want to be the kind of person who keeps that stuff. Some things you hold because they protect you. Some things you let go because holding them is quietly turning you into something you don't want to become. Colton drove out to the farmhouse about a month later. I was dividing ornamental grass along the front path when his truck pulled up. He sat in the cab for a full minute before getting out. Walked to the porch steps. Sat down. I pulled off my gloves and sat next to him. He looked at the fresh paint, the lavender, the clean gutters. I always knew Dad treated you different. Yeah. I just didn't want to be stuck in the middle. I know. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the cufflinks. Both of them. Laid them in his open palm. $30, he said. Give or take. He laughed. Not a bitter laugh. Just the quiet, worn-out laugh of a man finally adding up a bill he'd been avoiding. That's what Dad thought I was worth. $30 and a last name. That's what he thought. Not Grandpa. Not me. He looked at me then. Really looked. And I saw something on his face I hadn't seen since we were kids, the slow recognition that silence has a cost. That staying out of it isn't actually neutral. That the comfortable spot he'd been standing in his whole life was never as safe as he told himself. We sat on that porch for an hour. Didn't say much. Watched the tree shadows go long across the yard. At some point he picked up a spare paintbrush and finished a section of railing I'd left for the next day. No announcement. No big moment. He just picked it up and kept painting. It wasn't a reconciliation. It was two people sitting in the same place for the first time in years and not pretending the distance wasn't there. It was a start. Quiet $30 start. The farmhouse looks completely different now. Wraparound porch in mist gray with white trim. Clean gutters. Garden beds alive with color, raised vegetables, a cutting garden along the south side, lavender that hums with bees all summer. The old equipment shed out back is now a real design studio, 2 drafting tables, a wide format printer, a wall of mood boards and client projects in progress. I bring clients here to sit across from me at a real table, to see mock-ups printed large and pinned to the walls, to understand what their brand could look like when someone actually puts care into it. Business has more than doubled. I hired a part-time assistant named Deja, a 20-year-old from the community college who wants to study graphic arts and is the most naturally gifted visual thinker I've ever worked with. The empty box sits on the mantel in the living room, between a photo of my grandmother on her wedding day and a small cedar candle. It's open and facing out so you can see the worn velvet inside, the outline of something that was once there. I didn't frame it or dress it up. I just set it there. It's the most valuable object in that room. 'Cause it's what led me to everything. Walt still lives here. He's slower now, sleeps more, takes meals inside on cold days. But on evenings when the light is just right, he's on that porch in his chair watching me work. And he smiles with his whole face, the way you smile when something you hoped for a long time finally lands exactly where it was supposed to. Derek sent a card last month. No return address, no signature. 5 words in his handwriting. I didn't see you clearly. I'm still deciding what those words mean. Whether it's the beginning of something real or just a new version of the same story. I don't know yet. But I kept the card. I framed Walt's note. It hangs right by the front door eye level where I see it every single morning leaving and every evening coming home. 8 words in blue ink on a torn corner of notepad paper behind glass now. Everything real has been in your name for years. Some mornings I read it fast like reflex. Some mornings I stand there and let each word land one at a time. Everything. Not a part of it. Not some of it. Everything. Real. Not the ceremony. Not the performance. The actual thing underneath all of it. Has been. Past tense. Already done, already true, before the party, before the box, before I ever knew to look for it. In your name. Mine. Not my father's version of things. Mine. 4 years. A decade of quiet, careful work done by a man sitting on a farmhouse porch who never once asked me to say thank you. I used to think inheritance was about property. About who gets listed, who gets the house, who wins. I don't think that anymore. Inheritance is the knowledge that someone saw you accurately, completely, without conditions, and chose to stand between you and what was trying to diminish you. Even when it cost them. Even when it meant silence for 10 years. Even when the person doing the harm was family. My grandfather gave me 8 words. Those 8 words gave me back something my father spent 32 years trying to take, the solid belief that I mattered. Not because of what was in the trust. Not because of what was in my name. But because someone who loved me decided a long time ago that the world was going to agree with what he already knew. Every morning I touch the glass and think, thank you, Grandpa, for seeing me. And then I go outside and plant something. If you're the empty box person in your family, the one who gets overlooked, the one expected to show up and shut up and be grateful for the invite, I want you to sit with something. Look closer at the people who are quiet around you. The ones who don't say much but show up every single time. The ones who hold your hand when nobody's watching. Sometimes the people who look like they have no power are the ones doing the most important work. Sometimes the person who seems like they're just sitting there is 3 moves ahead of everyone else in the room. And sometimes the most valuable thing you'll ever inherit isn't a gem or a deed or a savings account. It's the knowledge that you were worth protecting all along. I spent 10 years believing I was alone. Believing the only person who saw me was my grandfather, and that all he could do was say kind things and be there on Saturday afternoons. I was wrong about what he was doing. He wasn't just watching. He was working. Quietly, legally, precisely over 10 years, making sure that when the moment came I'd have something real to stand on. My father gave me an empty box in front of 67 people. My grandfather gave me 8 words under the table. One of those gifts cost nothing and was designed to break me. The other was worth over $1 million and was designed to set me free. You matter. Even when the people who should tell you that are the very people working hardest to make you forget it. You matter. And if nobody said that to you today, you just heard it. The empty box is still on the mantle. Every time someone asks about it, I tell them the same thing. It's the most valuable gift my father ever gave me. They never believe me at first. Until I tell them the story. Now you know it too. Drop your story in the comments if you've ever been the empty box person, the one who got overlooked, passed over, handed nothing while everyone else got the ring and the watch and the applause. I read every single comment. Every one. You're not talking to a bot. You're talking to me. And if this story hit you somewhere real, please share it. Text it. Post it. Pin it. 'Cause somewhere out there is a person sitting in their car right now who is about to give up on someone ever seeing them. And this story might be the thing that keeps them going. Hit like if you made it to the end. Subscribe if you want more. And I'll see you in the next one, because I have a story coming that makes this one look like the warm-up. You do not want to miss it.